When I get stupid to the point that I'm mentally mad, I like to watch Barry's beats when he's up in the lab. His style is quite vibrant. We keep driving to educate the masses on this beat science. YouTube Barry's Beats and find you one. He'll show you how to tighten your hi-hats and drums. Craig G, Barry's Beats form the ultimate alliance. So please show these people out here your beat science.
Hey, how you doing? This is Barry Beats, and I'm back for another Barry School of Beats. I hope you enjoyed the last episode, the 3-part one. Lots of great feedback, so I appreciate all the love that I got for the last episodes. And don't forget, if you haven't done so, I hate to be a nag, but if you could subscribe, that would be fantastic. Share it, all that good stuff would be most appreciated. It all helps. So what are we going to be looking at in this episode? Well, it's another pretty sample-heavy track, to say the least. I haven't sort of done a great deal as far as manipulating the sample. It's pretty much what you hear on the record, although I've gone through and got all the best bits and chopped it up in that sense. But the main thing with this beat is the embellishment, the layering. I've kind of built upon the actual sample with all my own layers and just made the whole thing sound bigger and more hip-hop. It's the kind of thing Dr. Dre, Kanye West in his early days, and sort of Just Blaze, they're all famous for this. I'll put a few examples down the bottom for you to check out. But with this beat, it's very much in the prog rock idiom, a genre I do like to plunder. You know, I do like me prog rock, and this album is a strange one. It's kind of like a concept album. It's called The Butterfly Ball and the Grasshopper's Feast. It's by Roger Glover and his guests. I believe Roger Glover was a member of Deep Purple. I think it's certainly on their record label, Purple Records. But it's got some great little samples on this album. The one I went for is, I think it's on the A side, a track called Behind the Smile. Should we have a listen? Here we go. Okay, so that's the main groove. But it keeps breaking down. You get all those extra bits.
Behind the smile lies a face filled with cunning, but it's full of grace.
This is the main vocal bit that I took for the chorus.
He'll take care
Of you. So I took all those extra elements from all the different breakdowns. I think it breaks down about sort of 3 or 4 times. So again, sampled all those bits into Pro Tools and got busy. Okay, so here we are in Pro Tools. And well, the first thing I did was I just took all the good bits off the record and put them to the grid. So basically used elastic audio and just manipulated them so all the parts were exactly in time, because from there I wanted to take all the samples all in time and put them into contact, so then I could sort of manipulate and compare different bits really quickly, sort of on the fly. It's what I like to do. So that's what I did, and as you can hear, here we are. We've got so it took all the interesting parts, so then I could just chop them up, and I knew they'd be pretty much in time because I'd already stretched them to the grid. Okay, so as you can see, it's all in here as MIDI now, and I think I sort of dropped it mainly sort of in half bar sections. Okay, obviously because I'd stretched it already, it all went in time nicely. So all that work that I put in originally pays off when you get to chopping it up in the sampler. Okay, so next stage is, you've guessed it, the drums. Okay, so with the drums on this track, I loved the way the drums were played on the sample, and for me it was about trying to capture the swing and the pattern that was on the butterfly. Basically, I just wanted to sort of emphasize the original drums because they sounded fat, and that was part of the sort of head nodding greatness of the sample. First of all, I tried to groove extract. There's so much music going on, you couldn't really do it, so I had to pretty much do it all by ear. So I put in some stock drums, I played the pattern in, quantize it to 16s, and then for each hit, for each kick, snare, I would just nudge it forward and back until I got it bang on the sample. Then I started auditioning different drum sounds, and to be honest, I auditioned lots of different drum breaks over this. Once I got the pattern in there, I would just interchange it with different drum breaks, and getting the right ones that sat with the sample was actually quite difficult. They had to be pretty solid, pretty hard hitting drums, and quite dry. So in the end, I think the best ones I found were these. It's the Whackers from an album called Whackering Heights. Let's check it out. Okay, so chop the drums in contact, give them a little bit of processing, some reverb and a bit of compression. We got 2 snares, 3 hats I think, and 2 kicks. I think it's good to use a variety of different drum sounds just to make it sound a bit liver, a little bit less robotic. So basically with these, you can program what you want. So sounding pretty fat, and over the butterfly ball you can hear they sound like this. And I think as far as layering extra drums, normally I'd probably layer quite a few, but I think, well, the exception on this track, I think it's one of the only tracks I haven't layered the snare. I've kept the snare as is. I think I put an extra hi-hat. We've got, where is it? This hi-hat here, which is 2 hi-hats, and it's actually from the inbuilt drums that you get with Pro Tools, the Expand pack, and they're quite sort of full on and mix with the drums really well. The only other layer we've got is a kick layer, because the kick on the Whackers drums was a little bit weak, didn't have so much bottom end. So let me solo the kick that I use so you can have a listen. So you can hear with this kick we've got a lot more sort of bottom end welly, and if you combine it with the Whackers kick, let's have a listen. It sounds pretty solid. So let's check all the drums together with the layers. And as you can hear, because it's not strictly quantized, the timing is actually based on the sample. They've got quite a nice sort of live, real head noddy swing to them, which I really like. So played together with the butterfly ball, sounds a little something like this. Next step, bass line. Okay, so normally I really labour on bass lines. They take me a long time to get perfect, sometimes even days. Well, this track was the polar opposite. It was just quite a basic bass line that I played, and it just worked. It pretty much just mimics the piano line in the sample. Let's have a listen. As you can hear, I've used a bit of a distorted bass, which sounds great with it, especially with the sort of prog rock nature of the music. A few different variations here and there. So you've got this one here. Where is it? So there's a few little variations in there, but you get the gist. It's pretty basic, and played with everything else, it does the job. Let's have a listen. So there you go, an easy bass line for a change. Right, what else have we got? Well, we've actually got some real piano. I started this track quite a while back, where I had access to an actual upright piano. It was a little bit out of tune, but I mic'd it up and managed to record this. Let's have a little listen, shall we? Hear it over the butterfly ball. So that's the first piano layer. I actually put another one because I mean the break itself's fairly piano heavy, so I've also got this one which was done with a sampled piano. Should we have a listen with that as well? So as you can hear, this one's played a bit lower on the piano, but I've also sort of processed it again to sound quite heavy. Combine it with the real piano and the actual original sample. Here we go. So there you go. That's, I think, all the elements that I put in Pro Tools. In fact, I did attempt the synth, synth part with the synths that I had to my disposal in Pro Tools, but I couldn't get any of them sounding quite right. So I thought to myself, well, let's get it over in Ableton, where I've got the whole of Native Instruments complete to my disposal and lots of other soft synths. So basically that's what I did. I tracked this out of Pro Tools and we went over to my new best mate, Ableton. So I'm going to pause this and we'll be straight back in Ableton land. Okay, so here we are over in Ableton, and don't you worry, all you Ableton users out there, the next Barry School of Beats is going to be based in Ableton. So I'm just mopping up some of the old tracks that I did, which I started in Pro Tools, but all the new stuff I've been using Ableton and I've been loving it. I've got some great new tricks to show you guys, and some great new techniques. But for this track, I searched for the synth, went through lots of different presets, and in the end, the best one I could find was, it was a Native Instruments one. It was a Massive. Let me see. Let's get it up. Well, the preset's called Evil Chord, so there you go. The clue's in the title. But again, messed around a little bit with the settings and got this. This is basically for the main. If you listen to the break, there's a synth element, which is one of the great bits about the sample itself, is the do-do-do-do synth bit at the beginning of each bar. So this is what I managed to get from Massive. Have a listen. It's kind of like a unison synth effect. Let's hear it with the butterfly ball. There you go. So you can hear it's not exactly the same as the butterfly ball synth, but it's as close as I could get, and it complements it really well. So now I've got the main synth element in the bag. Time to have some real good fun and find other synths and other different layers to really build it up, give it variety, and sort of make it your own. So what have we got? I think the next one I found was an ARP one, which again I layered over the Massive synth. On its own, it sounds like this. But then with the Massive synth, it sounds like this. So it's just another bit of variety, works really nicely, and enables you to take what is in a sense, if anything, almost one bar loop, and give it the variety and the variation to make it really interesting. So we got that one. Also, every now and again, I would drop this one at the end of the 4 bars. It's a mini Moog. Let's have a listen to this, shall we? let's play those with the full track and see how they sound. So we got... So once I got the main elements in place and those layers, I found some nice sort of linky, spacey sounds. Let's have a listen to those. We got this one. It's from the ARP emulation. I think there was another one. It's down here. This one was done on the Moog. Let's have a look. Dusk Zone. So that's kind of like a droney, sort of very subtle droney effect. But again, it worked really well with the track. What else we got? Oh, there's this little bit of synth, another Moog sound. This is kind of like a Moog horn sound. I think I only used it once in the track, but again, it worked quite well. Let's have a listen to this. I'll play it on its own first. And with the music. Now, sticking with the verses, the only other thing that I did, got a bit carried away. I got my Rick Wakeman on and got a bit busy on the Moog and played a little bit of a Moog medley section towards the end of the verses. So should we have a listen to my keyboard dabbling? Here we go. And that takes us into the chorus. So with the chorus, again, I wanted to build it up a little bit, add a few extra layers, just so the chorus stands out and has that sort of impact that you need with a hook. So the first layer that I incorporated into the chorus was, it's basically some nice chords that reinforce the melody. Here we go. So I added that. What else did we put in the chorus? Oh, and we've got, well, it's like a string synth sound. I actually used the Mini Moog. Mini strings is the setting. These give it, again, a good lift for the chorus. Let's have a listen to these on their own. And as you can hear, all the sounds that I am using are very typical of the era and the genre of music, sort of prog rock, early 70s. So I'm going for all those kind of sounds. Finally, we've also got the same Moog sound that I used to play my little medley section. I've used that in the chorus as well. So let's hear that with the rest. So with that, I'm kind of mimicking the vocal. So shall we hear it with the vocal and the original beat? There you go. So, as you can see, you can just have a lot of fun, even if you've got a basic 1 bar or 2 bar loop kind of sample. You can just build it up with lots of different sounds, and that gives it the variety and the interest to keep people engaged with the beat. And it's just loads of fun embellishing and building up tracks in this fashion. Well, at least I find it fun. And the thing is, I'm not a great keyboard player by any stretch of the imagination. You know, I struggle with chords. But I think generally if you use your ear, you find the key, you play a few things. It's about knowing what you like the sound of and what you're into and what really gets you, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm sort of doing with these elements, is I'm just playing stuff that I think just adds something to the beat. So yeah, got it all in there, moved a few things, got the arrangement sounding nice. It kind of almost grew organically, this one. Obviously this is just for the sake of instrumental sort of beat. If anyone was to put a vocal on it, you'd rearrange it according to the vocal and whatever structure they were going to use. But yeah, happy with the structure I got for this instrumental. And well, I hate to say it, again, I chickened out. I didn't go for the mixing process in Ableton. I stemmed it back out, stuck it back in Pro Tools. We'll go back to Pro Tools. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail again about the mixing, but as I said, again, like with the last track that I did, with all these elements and the way you layer the drums, you don't actually have to work as hard in the mix, because a lot of the sort of frequencies and a lot of the stuff is already covered there and it's sounding really good. So let's go back to Pro Tools and we'll just look at all the different stems and the elements and see what we've got and have a listen to the final mix. All right, cheers. Okay, so here we are back in Pro Tools, and let's have a look at the drums, shall we? Well, I did the thing I usually do to drums when I'm mixing them. I use the old New York parallel compression technique, which I think I showed you in the last Barry School of Beats, where you take a dry signal. Let's listen to the dry one. And then you mix it with a compressed signal, where it's really compressed, seriously pumping, and put them together. And it just sounds really beefy. Got a bit of reverb. I've done a double reverb here, where I've got a plate reverb and a spring reverb. So I'm using two together. Both of them have like quite a vintage sound to them. And I think, as far as I can recall, I'm mainly putting it on the snare, because I need the drums to sound pretty solid. They don't need to sound like they're in a big hall, but the snare does sound good with a bit of reverb. Let's have a listen. And I've panned the reverb, as you can see. So there's a bit more spring on the right and a bit more plate on the left. I think just by layering reverbs, you can thicken them up quite nicely. So they're the drums. As I say, we've got the AC/DC one I forgot to mention before, and that is EQ'd with quite a bit of high on it. We've got the one from Pro Tools, the one in the expand pack, which I really like, and I've also put a bit of lo-fi effect. Actually, I've got to mention and give a massive shout out to the Air Lo-Fi plugin. This is really my go-to plugin for drums. It's part of the Air suite, which you get free with Pro Tools. They're quite basic, but they do what they say on the box, and for my money, the Lo-Fi Air plugin is probably my favorite for giving that SP1200 bit reduced crunch, especially to snares. I mean, you can have a listen here on this snare with and without. So I'm going to solo the whacker snare, and we're going to get the air plug-in. Here it is, and we're going to bypass it. Okay, and with it in, it just gives it that extra bit of crunch and bite. It does something with that top end and high mid that I really like. Obviously we got the kick layer, which that pretty much, if we look at the EQ, we cut it at the top and we just give it a little tiny boost at the bottom. That's there to reinforce the bottom end. Put it with the whackers one. Now the whackers is, if we look, will be the opposite. We give a little bit of low mid boost. So they're pretty much the drums. Now let's have a look at what I did with the actual sample. Let's have a listen to that.
Yeah.
you can see, I filtered off a bit of top and bottom on it. That just gives a bit more space for the other instruments to work with it. Probably the biggest challenge with the mix on this track was not so much the sample in the verse, but the chorus, because we had the singing. We needed to bring the singing out so you could hear the vocal and what he's saying. But obviously you remember we've stacked it with lots of layers, so the more layers you add, it sort of drowns out the sample. So what I did with the chorus, I kept the original sample, the same EQing as the verses, so you've got the continuity, but I also duplicated it, and well, if you listen on its own, I severely EQ'd it and just tried to EQ the frequencies of the vocals out. So if you listen to it on its own, as you can hear, I've also cut out the bits where there's no singing, and if you add that onto the actual sample,
Behind the smiling lies a face filled with cunning, but it's full of grace.
it does enhance the vocal part. And let's listen to it together.
Behind the smiling lies a face filled with cunning, but it's full of grace. Guns unfriendly, but beware how you take care of you.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. All the other elements, I kind of just got the levels right and panned them. Didn't do a great deal to them. Just got them all sitting in the mix nicely. But that's the joy of using layers, really, is you don't have quite so much work to do in the mix. I mean, if I take the butterfly ball out now, you'll hear all the layers on their own. Let's have a listen. So as you can hear, you almost get away with it without the sample, but just having the sample in there does just bring the whole thing to life. So yeah, that's pretty much the track. If you want to hear the entire fully mixed version in top quality WAV file, you can get it on my Bandcamp page. So the link's below, and if you haven't checked the video, I've also done a video for it on my Barry's Beat Library collection, and that's got some rather interesting footage that I edited up of a rather avant-garde Russian pop performer from the 80s. So that's a bit of fun. So yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for making it to the end. Hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more Barry's School of Beats. In fact, got some exciting stuff we're going to be doing. The next one will be in Ableton, and I'll be demonstrating a new technique that I've sort of developed, which is something I've been thinking about for a while, which is basically involves quite a bit of MIDI extraction, but and sampling without ending up with a sample. So stay tuned for that one. Subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff if you haven't done so already, and I will catch you soon. Okay, take care of yourself. Cheers.
Educate the masses on this beat science.
Barry's School of Beats.
Watch Barry's Beats when he's up in the lab.
Give a little like and a thumbs up.
Barry's Beats will have your arms swinging.
And if you could just press the old subscribe button.
See you on the next episode of Barry Science.